Welcome to Feed Your Lion. I'm Dr. L.I.O.N, and I'm here to aid you in the mastery of total health, spiritual, mental, emotional, physical, and financial. So prepare to have your wellness tank filled up with this podcast. All right, welcome back to another episode of Feed Your Lion. Today we're here with Mabe, and she is going to delve into some mental health tips and things for us today. So welcome to the show. And go ahead and start off. Tell us a little bit about your background and why you decided to get into the mental health industry.
Of course. Thank you for having me. So some big parts of my background and some big parts of my identity really are the fact that I have a twin and the fact that I have an older sister that has autism. So that kind of shaped a lot of my childhood and the way that I developed to value helping others and being a kind, calm force for other people. I really wasn't sure what I wanted to pursue in college. Could be a whole other conversation about how no 18-year-old really knows what they want to do from that year and time and everything like that. So I went to my local community college just to complete some general classes until I knew what I was going to do. And I had a really impactful advisor that suggested social work from our conversation. And he had me start some of the classes, and I just really felt like that was where I needed to be. And it's a super broad field, so I'm able to work with all sorts of different populations and just kind of work to find a niche. I really want to do things in the realm of like guided journals and being able to author different resources for therapists. I think that would be a good way to kind of shift my passion into being able to help other people that also help people, because that's kind of a realm that isn't well explored. So I've worked in substance use, mental health groups. I've worked with individuals from 3 to 63, probably, and more in a range, but quite a wide range. And I'm doing my internship for my master's program in foster care. And that's definitely been quite the experience. But just working on, all that kind of stuff.
No, that's awesome. It's so needed. I feel like our mental health resources and social work resources are just, we always need more of those things. So I think that's great what you're doing. So talk a little bit, why do you think good mental health is important? And why do you think we struggle with it so much, I guess, as a society?
I think that we almost make it too complicated. So our physical and mental health are really well combined. And if we don't have a good mental headspace, then we aren't taking very good care of ourselves. We aren't doing things that we enjoy and that bring us like that happiness. And it tends to be really detrimental to our careers, our relationships, even our living conditions. So being able to prioritize the mental health is super important and is impactful to every area of our lives.
Absolutely. I totally agree. So let's talk about perspective a little bit. So, you have two people going through, a similar situation. Okay. And it seems like, some people handle things so well. Like some people can be going through all kinds of craziness and they seem to be just really steady about it and they just work through it and it's fine. And other people like completely lose their minds. Like, do you think a lot of that has to do with perspective, or what is that?
I do think that perspective is incredibly important. Kind of the example that comes to mind is if two siblings grew up in an identical household, same school, same home life, everything. And let's say the father has a substance use problem. He's an alcoholic. Those two siblings, so one of them could decide to, repeat what they saw growing up and kind of go down that same path and cycle. And the other sibling could look at it and say, I want something different for my life and never touch anything and just kind of live a life that doesn't include those things. So I think that we either learn from what we've experienced or we repeat it. And I've seen that time and time again. So it just continues to kind of prove it to me that that's really important.
Well, and I think it goes to show that you can't also use, and everybody's had some stuff that's gone bad in their life. Some people a lot worse than others, but, I think there's definitely positive things that can come from that, and people can really use what they've gone through to help somebody else. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't have to all be a negative thing. But what are your thoughts on, as far as like what the root causes of mental illness are? Is it all related to trauma or past experience? Is it a chemical imbalance thing? Is it a combination? Like, what do you think some of that, what causes it? What's the root of a lot of it?
I do think that the root of a lot of it tends to be trauma. Even just going back to the substance use example, the dad could have gone to substances and escaped for what he experienced as a child, or if something had gone, difficult in his life. It does seem like when we go to the root of a lot of mental illness, depression, anxiety, even some symptoms of ADHD can be considered like a complex trauma.
Yeah.
Because that's how we're kind of coping with what we've experienced.
How early do you think like trauma occurs? Like, is it, from, we've heard about, having trauma in the womb, or even further back than that, ancestral trauma, where it's been passed down from generation to generation. What's your thoughts on that?
So definitely with trauma in the womb, and this is something that I've just learned recently, is the fact that the cortisol can reach the baby through the placenta. So if the mom is in a high stress situation in domestic violence or various things like that that cause repeated intense trauma, it can impact the way that the baby's mind grows. Karen Purvis was the woman who had introduced the concept to me. We were watching some of her videos and materials through the agency that I'm working at for my internship. She noted that the elevated levels of cortisol and fetal distress can impact the architecture of the child's developing brain. It changes its shape, structure, and organization. So it can impair functioning, and we work a lot in our downstairs brain, is what they call it, if we aren't able to really develop. So we're at our basic instincts. As we grow and develop is when we're able to get the logic and the reasoning that comes with the upstairs brain, being able to bridge that disconnect and help them build their own staircase to get back up to where they need to be.
Yeah. So you guys, you hear that, you moms to be, you need to chill out there. Okay. You're impacting your babies. All right. Take a mental note. All right. So what's the connection between mental health and other types of health? So, that's the whole basis of this podcast anyways, is all the types of health, right? Physical, mental, spiritual, emotional, and financial, like wellness health. So what's the connection between those?
Definitely, there's a huge connection. Everything of those is related. So let's say we have a physical manifestation of our anxiety. So we have a stomach ache, or we have breathing issues. Personally, I had really bad breathing issues for years, gone to many different doctors, and they told me a multitude of reasons. And the last one that they said was, "Oh, it's your anxiety that makes it hard to breathe." And I'm like, that's just to make that connection, and to see even in my own life how that physically manifests into our bodies, and how when we aren't taking care of ourselves as we should, like if we have too much caffeine, it'll ramp up our anxiety and then we'll have trouble breathing. So
Right.
the way that it all kind of connects together, being able to help people with like that spiritual aspect, and if that's something that they want to explore, really just have it all holistic.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. In the ER and even in life in general, you see a lot of people come in, but you notice they have a lot more of these physical manifestations, as you said, when they are in times of stress, or they have a lot going on in their life. It manifests in them physically. And a lot of times they're not addressing the root cause of these issues. And if they do that, it kind of takes care of the physical, because it is all connected. And I think, it's easy for people to say, oh, just give me a pill for this or that. But, sometimes it's doing that deeper work to kind of bring that healing that really is what's needed. So I totally agree with that 100%. What about like comparison? What kind of effect do you think that has on mental health? Like, oh, I see this person doing well in this area or that. Do you think that affects a lot of people today?
Oh, for sure. One of my favorite quotes is comparison is the thief of joy. And that was
Mhm.
Theodore Roosevelt. And when we compare ourselves to other people, it makes it so we can't revel in our own accomplishments and really see the good things that we can do.
Mhm.
Especially with things like social media. You go on and you only see the good parts of someone's life, not, I'm struggling today, so I'm going to post about it. I
Right.
have a perfect life or a perfect body, or, my mindset's the strongest that we all have. I think the key to that is learning to compare ourselves to just ourselves, to work and strive towards being better, not for any external validation or for our partners or for our friends, but just for
Right.
ourselves.
There's a I'm in a karate thing, and we have to memorize these, kind of code of ethics, for life. And one of my favorite ones is actually, I will spend so much time in the discipline of myself that I have no time to criticize others. And I kind of love that quote because if we all spent much more time focused on how we could improve ourselves and like what we could do to be better and compete more from within ourselves than looking for external validation for things, I think it would make the world a lot better. A
Mm-hmm.
lot
For
less.
sure.
Yeah. So I'm with you there. So moving on from there, what about imposter syndrome? Describe like what that means and like um, the kind of effects that might have on somebody's mental health as well.
For sure. So Merriam-Webster defines imposter syndrome in part as persistent doubt concerning one's abilities or accomplishments, accompanied by the fear of being exposed as a fraud, despite evidence of one's ongoing success. So it really just means that we've gotten ourselves to this amazing place, and I think that you and I could probably relate on that in terms of being in a really good spot, but then not sure if we deserve it or if we could be doing things differently. um we're not sure if we're reaching the point that we need to be, and perfectionism tends to go hand in hand with imposter syndrome
Right.
in regard of we're doing good but we could be doing better,
Mhm.
and we're really hard on ourselves.
Yeah.
I think too, being able to let go of any like perceived timelines that we have for our lives.
Yeah.
People get married at different times in their lives or never at all, or they have children at different times.
Yeah.
They go to school, later in life. So
Yeah.
being able to know that we can achieve whatever we want to in whatever timeline we want to is really important.
Yeah.
And the only reason that we think that there's a timeline for it is because that's the average. And so we just need to
Mhm.
realize that there's a range above and below that exists just as well.
That's right. Just because you have an average doesn't mean there's a bunch of outliers on either side. So exactly. So tell me about what your thoughts are on mental health stigma, especially you were talking about your sister and things earlier. What are some of the kind of stigmas that you've seen in your own life? And then talk from there about access to mental health services and what currently it seems like we don't have enough of any of these things. So what do you think is going to happen with that? Is it going to continue to get worse? What are your thoughts on that?
So I think just really impactfully with the pandemic, kind of included the introduction of telehealth in our field. So we were
Mhm.
able to see people
Yeah.
from a video call format.
Mhm.
But that's also really difficult because I think that we can all understand that not having that face-to-face connection with someone, being able to read their body language and having that additional layer of communication, can be really difficult for people. It has its positives, it has its negatives.
Mhm.
And there's kind of a growing pain that comes with telehealth of being able to, have reliable service and make sure that things are compliant. I know that was a big thing, was HIPAA compliance with our telehealth, making sure that, our patient's information is well monitored and safe.
Absolutely.
I think that it was better than, when agencies shut down and you just weren't able to see anyone at all. Definitely a good alternative, but I think that as we're coming out of it, that we should not have to lean on it as heavily.
Mhm.
Being able to have like consistency and being able to remain honest with your therapist is really important, because we tend to we help clients help themselves. Nothing that we say or do is going to change their lives because they do that on their own. I think
Yeah.
that's kind of a misconception when it comes to therapy, is that we have this magic button that we're going to press that makes you all better. And
Yep.
it does take a lot of hard work on the client side.
Yeah.
We do still have a lot of stigmatization when it comes to therapy and reaching out for help when we need it. One of the things that has been a major game changer lately, was that they just changed the National Suicide Hotline to be more accessible for people. So I don't know if you've known this yet, but they changed it to 988 instead of the
Oh,
1-800, the very long number.
yeah.
There's something now that makes it more accessible to people. So I think that that's something that I can just see in the field is making things better, is being able to
Yeah.
destigmatize it and make it accessible for others. So
So that was
if
again
you or anyone you know is
988.
struggling, yeah,
Yeah.
988. Yep.
988. I just want to repeat that in case somebody needed that, because I didn't know actually that it changed. So that's now the suicide hotline number, 988. Okay, that's good to know. And I like that you said that. I love that telemedicine has gotten bigger. I was using that way before. I've been doing telemedicine for years. I started actually doing my own telemedicine company too, but it's it's a very convenient way. And I think in the world and society we're in, people do want that convenience. And I like that you said too, like, you're right. People, I think, expect the magic pill for everything. And it's not. A lot of these things, when it comes to health in all manner, it's a lot about discipline and choosing. You've heard that quote of choosing your hard. It's hard to be overweight and it's hard to eat right and exercise. Like, it's like choosing that hard. And I think a lot of it is people making that decision, like, hey, this is what I want for my life. And these are the things I'm willing to sacrifice in order to make that happen. And so I think there is that trade off. But I do like that telemedicine has definitely increased the access for a lot of people who may not otherwise be able to see a therapist or a physician for that matter. So it's definitely, I mean, the one good thing I could say that came from COVID is definitely those things boomed. That industry really boomed with it. And I don't think that's a bad thing for a lot of reasons, but you're right. People still need to, go see some things you have to do in person, but I do think it's a good thing. But I like that you mentioned both of those. So as far as like ways, if somebody is really serious about improving their mental health, what are some ways that they can do that? What are some examples? And is it a one size fits all, or is there a different, some people might do better with one type versus another?
Yeah, for sure. One of the most important things and one of the first things that I learned in regards to mental health is that the treatment is never a one size fits all.
Mhm.
If it was, it'd probably be my job probably wouldn't exist.
Yeah.
But being able to have things like meditation, gratitude, journaling,
Yeah.
even just from the level of having a better work-life balance, feeling more supported in your relationships,
Yeah.
being able to there was a quote from Bessel van der Kolk, wrote an amazing book called The Body Keeps the Score. Highly
Mhm.
recommend it.
Okay. What is it
He
again? Say it
notes,
again.
it's okay. The Body Keeps the Score.
Okay.
Bessel van der Kolk.
Okay. There you go.
Yep. So he said being able to feel safe with other people is probably the single most important aspect of mental health. Safe connections are fundamental to meaningful and satisfying lives.
Mm.
I think that that's definitely a huge thing. Personally, I practice guided meditations with my clients.
Yeah.
I do still see a lot of them through telehealth. So there are different videos on YouTube and online that are anywhere from 5 to 10 minutes long, and they're guided meditations that are focused on different things. So there's some for sleep or anxiety. So being able to let them pick out which one they want to practice together and being
Yeah.
there to support them through it. And really, really, it's been interesting to see how impactful it can be. And just taking that time to let them calm down after a session and just take 10 minutes for themselves.
Yeah. Do you have anybody who's like, I just can't do meditation. I can't sit still, or do you have that? Do you run across that a lot?
They mostly with children has been
Okay.
the big thing is getting them to focus in that way. But they do make some tailored towards children. I believe it's called Cosmic Kids Yoga. And so being able to add that movement component really helps them to be able to focus in.
So that I like that you said that. So there's so many different ways to like meditate and practice mindfulness. Like I need to have just a full meditation podcast on here and like talk about that in depth. But as far as, you don't have to just sit with no movement. There's ways to be active and meditate, right? Like there's not, it doesn't have to be just I'm sitting in a dark, quiet room, you know. I mean, there's a lot of ways to do it, right?
For sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So as we get towards the end of this, is there anything you want to add or discuss that we didn't really cover in some of those questions?
So just a couple of things, kind of in the same realm as the question that we were talking about, is to find joy in little parts of our lives.
Mhm,
So let's say, the thing that you do in the morning is to have a cup of coffee.
mhm,
Being able to kind of section off that time and sit outside for a couple of minutes, or just being able to relish in that moment and not, drink your cup of coffee as you're working, being able to just kind of take it and have fun with it on its own.
yeah.
But finding little ways to do that throughout our day so that when we get to the end of it, we're able to look back and say, I had 4 or 5 things that made me happy today. And that's because I really prioritized finding those times and moments for myself. I think that
Yeah.
people think self-care and things like that have to be an hour or 30 minutes when really it
Mhm.
could just be 5 minutes of really intentional being with ourselves.
Yeah.
And I think especially it's hard with kids. So, you know, throw on a meditation for them and then go in another room and throw on a meditation for yourself.
Sure,
But
absolutely.
finding ways to bring it in. And I think too, being able to help the new generation learn ways to cope earlier in life, as we're seeing what worked and what didn't work. Just being able to bring them in and help them through that as well.
Absolutely. Well, and I like you said that. And actually, there was something like Tony Robbins. I was reading one of his books, and he was talking about, the taking the gratitude moment when you're frustrated. And, this has worked for me a couple of times, even just when you have that and something you're irritated or the day is not going right, like taking just that couple minutes to like really focus all your energy and attention on something that you feel truly grateful for. And if you really do that and let that feeling like permeate through, it's really hard to stay upset or angry, or it is, if you're really like, if you have that thankful gratitude mindset and heartfelt like feeling of gratitude, it really is hard to stay in that negative or lower vibrational energy. It really is. So I like that you talked about just taking a couple minutes. Like you said, it does not have to be long. People are always like, I don't have time for this. I don't have time for that, which that to me is not an excuse. I mean, if you want to do something, you can make time for it, but it takes so little to actually make these really big positive impacts in your life. So I love that you said that. But tell people where they can find you, like where they can find you on social media, email, phone, however you would want people to get in touch with you if they have questions or more interested in this topic.
For sure. So right now I have an email address for my business. It's called Relax and Rewire LLC at gmail.com. And I also have a Psychology Today account for my therapy work that people can go on there to be able to connect with me as well.
Okay. So, and they can find that under, how do they find the therapy if they want to do that?
It would just be under my name. So Kaitlyn, Kaitlyn, Mabe, Mabe.
Okay, and tell me that email one more time. Is it and with a plus or A and D?
It is just and relax and rewire LLC at gmail.com.
Okay, there you go. So if you guys want to hear more about that or interested in some further services, definitely don't hesitate to reach out to her. As always, we're going to start wrapping up with our quote of the day. And this is, promise me you'll always remember you're braver than you believe and stronger than you seem and smarter than you think. And that's Christopher Robin from Winnie the Pooh. Kate, thanks for having us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
All right.